The boys who killed their parents. Why two rich brothers committed an unspeakable crime. Entertainment executive Jose Menendez and his former beauty queen wife Kitty lived with their two sons, Lyle and Erik, in a Beverly Hills mansion that had previously been home to Prince and, before that, Elton John. That mansion became the scene of Jose and Kitty's brutal murders on August 20, 1989. Lyle, 21, and Erik, 18, shot their father point blank in the back of the head with a shotgun as he and their mother watched a movie. As Kitty tried to get away, they shot her in the leg and then followed with more shots in her arms, chest, and face until she was unrecognizable. She died in the hallway in a pool of her blood. Lyle and Erik drove off, dumping the shotguns from Mulholland Drive and throwing their blood-spattered clothes in a dumpster. They bought movie tickets. Then they went back home, and Lyle called police, sobbing, "They shot and killed my parents." Erik curled up in a fetal position on the front lawn, wailing loud enough for all the neighbors to hear. The brothers' grief was so convincing that police didn't even test their hands for gunshot residue. Lyle gave a 30-minute eulogy at his parents' funeral. Over the next 6 months, the brothers splurged an estimated $700,000 of their parents' money. Lyle bought a Rolex, a Porsche, and a restaurant in New Jersey that specialized in buffalo wings. Erik hired a private tennis coach and began traveling the world, playing in tournaments. Lyle later tried to explain away the spending spree to interviewer Barbara Walters. "People react to a traumatic event like that, in different ways," he said. Just a few months after the deaths, a guilt-ridden Erik admitted to his psychologist, L. Jerome Oziel, that he and his brother had killed their parents. Lyle found out and threatened to kill Oziel if he told anyone. Oziel's mistress, Judalon Smith, heard the confession, which the psychologist had taped. Several months later, after a nasty breakup with Oziel, she told the police about it. Lyle was arrested on March 8, 1990. His brother Erik was playing a tennis tournament in Israel at the time, but gave himself up to police when he returned to LA. Their murder trial in 1993 had Americans transfixed. People would line up from 4 a.m. to get a seat in the courtroom, and it was watched by millions more on TV. They were painted as spoiled kids who killed their parents for the money, but they said they were the real victims. Image. Getty. The prosecution claimed the brothers had killed their parents to get their hands on their $14 million fortune. But the defense claimed the brothers had feared for their lives after years of psychological, physical, and sexual abuse from their parents. If it could be proven that the brothers felt their lives were in imminent danger, they could be acquitted or found guilty of a lesser charge, manslaughter. There was no question Jose was a hard man. The Cuban immigrant had gone from being a dishwasher to an executive who helped sign the Eurythmics and Duran Duran. According to an article in Vanity Fair, Jose was despised by many of his employees. He had a reputation for humiliating people in front of their coworkers and taking pleasure in firing people. As a husband, he was allegedly unfaithful, with a mistress and a string of girlfriends. As a father, he was determined for his sons to be tennis pros, making them get up early in the mornings to train and pushing them ruthlessly on the court. But was he guilty of committing the most violent and horrific acts of sexual abuse against his young sons? Could Kitty have known about it and let it happen? Could the parents have been guilty of everything else the defense lawyers accused them of? Bashing Lyle's pet rabbit to death, or putting his urine-soaked sheets on the breakfast table after he wet the bed at 14. The defense claimed Jose molested Lyle from the ages of 6 to 8, and Erik from the ages of 6 to 18. They alleged that Lyle had discovered Erik was still being molested, and confronted Jose, telling him to leave Erik alone or he'd expose him. Lyle said after the confrontation he felt that he and Erik were in danger. "He would kill us. He'd get rid of us in some way, because I was going to ruin him." Two cousins, Andres Cano and Diane van der Molen, who had separately spent time staying with the Menendez family, testified that the boys had told them about the sexual abuse when they were young. The first trial ended with hung juries, but eventually, in 1996, the brothers were found guilty and sentenced to life in jail without parole. Lyle and Erik have been held in separate prisons and haven't seen each other since the sentencing. They are both married, although conjugal visits aren't allowed in Californian prisons. Listen to this episode of True Crime Conversations. Post continues after podcast.